tail to get moving. Nun is to whip into action. So the other thing about mem and nun is that mem is an environment of water that the fish is in and the fish jumps out of. Mem is where you also get the word mom and emma. Aleph mem, is the word mother. It's also a city, a metropolis. It's a place, it's like an industrial center where you bring in resources and then you process them and produce them and you put out a product. So the mem is the hidden environment that the resources come into and they're turned into this product which jumps out, which is the birthing of a baby or the production of a product, or like the fish that jumps out of the water. That's the relationship between mem and nun. Summit is a support. You can kind of see a lattice work for putting your rose bushes on. But it also looks pretty much just like the picture of a menorah of a same type of form. Ayin, that's an eyeball. Ayin literally is eyeball, but it also means, when you see an eyeball, ponder, consider, comprehend, weigh, and measure. Pei is a mouth. You can picture, this guy's nose and his eyes and see, there's a mouth. So pei is literally the mouth. Zadi is a sprout. Aaron's rod that budded. He had a regular stick. Remember, they were contending for who should be the high priest, and Korach accused Moshe of nepotism, and hey, you're just giving your brother all the good job, and so they all put their sticks in there, and his rod leafed out and budded and flowered and put out almonds. Picture the sprout. Kuf means after this. It also is like the back of the head. If somebody passed by you, what you see is the back of the head. If you're walking, what you leave behind, what follows you is your footprints. Yaakov is spelled with a kuf. It's our letter Q. If you ever spell the word kadosh, you always see it written with a K. It's not a K, it's a Q. You can say, it's just phonetic, it doesn't really matter. How do you spell Gaddafi's name? I saw it with a G, a Q, and a K. That's phonetic. We in English, we really don't care. The reason why we don't know this language and why it won't do any good is because that's the general sentiment. It really doesn't matter. But there's a big difference between a kuf and a kaf. The word kadosh is spelled with this letter kuf, and so a lot of times people will spell this letter K-O-F. So I'm trying to help people learn the language, so I resist certain things that other people do as if it doesn't matter. So I spell it with a Q-O-O-F. Sometimes maybe with a Q-U-F, but I said, people might think that's cuff, so I've started trying to make something kind of uniform, so I spell it cool. And this I spell with a K-A-F, kaf. Kaf and kuf. I'll tell you in a minute why it's a big difference. And then you'll see why it matters, the pictures that you associate with the letters. Resh is an exalted man. There's his head. So this is the back of the head, and that's like the front of his head, or the full face view, or the exalted man. Sheen is teeth in fire. Now, Jeff Benner draws these teeth like that. Well, those look like bunny teeth, like bunny teeth. It's still legitimate, I suppose, but, teeth in fire, that which consumes, shark fangs or something. And the letter Tav is an X. Now, when we have a contract today, here, it's X, sign your name. That means at the end of the contract, I agree to these terms. And if you're illiterate and you can't spell your name, it's perfectly legal to just write an X. Because it means, I agree, this is it, this is the sum total of everything, here it is, the end of the terms, nobody's going to slip anything else in, right there, we've signed it off. That's what it means. It's a mark, it's a sign. When you get to the end of something, sometimes there's an X. When you get danger, like skull and crossbones, it's the X. That's what the letter means. It represents the covenant, the end. Pay attention, this is serious business. Now, I'll show you some other details in the letters.
Before you leave the top, is there any correlation with the process in Calvary, as some people read it, going back to the Aleph Tav again, the beginning and the end, that Calvary's the end? Is that stretching the stuff too far?
If you gave your kids some building blocks, or back in my day it was Lincoln logs and an erector set, The only rule with what you can do with this stuff is don't poke your brother in the eye or throw it at your sister. These are letters. We're looking at letters. Now, some people will get real dogmatic and say, you can't do that. In fact, I had somebody just the other day say, listen, if you try to say it means this, you can lead people astray. And my contention is, we're kids playing with letters. This stuff has been hidden and sealed for 3,500 BC, Daniel was told, approximately. It was told to hide these words into this book. This is now the last 2,500 years this stuff has been locked up. I want to show you something in Daniel, but I want to show you something about the Mishkan pattern first. So what I'm saying is Frank Seekin says the X, well, it's also twisted however you want to look at it. Hey, it's sign of the cross. So what he says is, and this is a Frank Seekinism, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's just one level. Torah, written in Paleo, Tav, Vav, Resh, He. Read it backwards. Behold, or see, He, enlighten, the man nailed to the cross. So everything in Torah should say something about revealing the fact that the Messiah, the exalted man, would be nailed to the cross. What do you do with that? Do you say that's wrong? It is what it is. But try to now talk to somebody who doesn't believe in the Messiah and make a claim for that and say, that's not what Torah means. But Torah can also be read, so the word or in Hebrew is Vav Resh. As a matter of fact, on day one he said, let there be light. It was or Aleph Vav Resh. But there was no lights until day 4. He put lights in the sky. The word menorah is mem, noon, men, or, Vav Resh, hey, ah. Mem is a place. Remember, like the womb is a place from which something else comes from? And noon is to jump out. What jumps out? Light that then illuminates and reveals. So a menorah, it doesn't have to be the one with the 6 arms and the one in the center, like right there. A menorah can be any place. That's a menorah. That's the place that light emanates from. But we think, well, that's not a menorah, that's a fluorescent tube. That's a menorah. Because, see, we associate things which aren't necessarily there. And so studying the language changes our frame of reference. And this is just surface stuff. When you see more and more stuff, the more you study this Hebrew, everything starts changing. And you realize that our consciousness has been defined by our culture, which is Greco-Roman, British, American, 21st century, which might be completely different than going to the East. Speaking of going to the East, I'll show you another word. Isaac Moses and I believe the guy who talked about this. There's the first commandment given to Adam. You know what it was? Huh? Oh, to be fruitful and multiply. Sorry, the first thing that he, the job he was given.
The guard.
Guard. You know what word that is? Well, name the animal. You're right. Okay. Okay. The third thing you're supposed to do. Okay. To guard. Do you know what the word is to guard in Hebrew? Shamar. Shin Mem Resh. My guard, or my guarding, the fact that I'm guarding something would be Shin Mem Resh Yod, Shamri. Shamar is Shin Mem Resh. In Japanese, the king's guard were known as samurai. Same exact word. Samurai. It's Hebrew. There's all kinds. Isaac Moses did this book. It's got a red cover, looks similar to this. It's a paperback. It's simply called The Word. And in it, the last I heard was like 26,000 words that he follows back and shows you right how they came out of Hebrew. And they're just regular English words, but they twist around. The phonetics twist and flip over, but it's not like, well, here's this word and it's completely different over here. For example, this word you pronounce as edit. Edit. And I'll show you in a minute why I think this is so profound, because what we're doing is editing the text that we've been given. Anyway, the Mishkan pattern, which is to say, to answer your question, yes, you can do a lot of different things with these. And whatever I'm showing you is I'm just trying to like break the thing open to give you a sense of appreciation, to incite you to develop your own studies. The Mishkan pattern, this is just something that I noticed. The 2004, beginning of the year, my brother in Portland, he has a friend, a missionary in Nigeria. And I tell the story to his credit. They got the Jesus film. You know what that is? It's Wycliffe Bible Translators, Campus Crusades for Christ. Over 200 languages they've translated this into. So he gets this, puts it on a video, gets a generator. Him and a friend go over to Nigeria, hop in a Land Cruiser and go out into the bush, out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's ever seen a movie. Nobody's ever heard the Bible. Nobody knows anything about Jesus. Set up this bed sheet, play this movie, and he's speaking in their own language. Now in Nigeria, there's over 400 languages. So imagine if every city in the U.S. spoke a different language. It would be really hard to communicate. But this Azeri language is kind of like the common language, so they put it in Azeri. Thousands of people coming from all around. They're sitting here watching this movie, and the little kid is born, and okay, he does some interesting things, some miracles, and he says some wonderful things, and then all of a sudden they grab him and they nail him onto a tree. I mean, that must be just shocking if you didn't expect it. And they just kill this guy that you just had developed in this movie an affection for, and everybody's crying and the earth turns dark. And see, these people don't already know the story like we do, so to us it's maybe not so shocking. All of a sudden he pops back out of the grave, and it's like, what? And then he goes off into heaven and says, see you later. And then it's like, oh, he's coming back here. But do you want to believe in this guy and go to heaven and have your sins forgiven? Sure. Well, now what do we do? Well, they can't read. There's no alphabet. There's no books. There's no preachers. Back in the city, a few hundred miles away, there's maybe some churches, but what do? So, well, somebody has to become a preacher. Somebody has to start a church. There's no church. There is no Bible. There is no book. What do? Sorry, we got to go to the next village. And so you go to the next village and show the movie, and the same thing would happen. You go to the next village and show the same movie, and the same thing would happen. And all these people are believing in Jesus and wanting to go to heaven and have their sins forgiven. It's like, well, now what do? Well, somebody's got to buy some books and become a preacher. They can't afford any books. They trade in goat's milk and yams. They can't buy a book worth hundreds of dollars. It would take a year's salary if they could buy a book, but they can't read. So he comes back and he tells me, he said, boy, this is a big